Hello, good morning, good evening. We are about to start, so let's just set up now and let me check if it's streaming already. Just trying to check on my other device. Well, I can check here as well. Channel. Live session. It says it is live. We are live. I do see myself with quite a bit of lag, of course. And oh, hi Tiago, how are you? It's really good to hear you, good to see you. I'm not hearing you, I just hear myself. Okay. Okay. Who? I think Tiago is the only one here. Let's see. Live session. Yeah, so anyway, today I thought that we are going to just chat about things that you want to hear about, and I also have some ideas as well. Oh, Ben from Haarlem, hello from the Netherlands. Hello, awesome. Here it's really rainy outside and really gloomy. The rain just stopped early morning, and cats are still sleeping. Nelly is sleeping as well, and I'm just drinking some water, waking up, and hello up, good morning, and yeah. So anyway, let's see. I was thinking about look at this. I'm just going to switch a little bit towards here. Odiagan discussion forum, and there's a thread, and I just run into this. Not sure why, but I was reading it, and it said that someone was looking for single-ended triode amplifier that is over 40 watts output, and cost is not a problem. So now I don't want to talk about like hyper expensive amplifiers, but just about the concept of using a 40 plus watt single-ended triode to drive speakers. And I think what the person wants here is not the most fortunate situation, and when we look at the thread, what he asks for will be clarified that it's not the most fortunate thing, and he is asking for a really bad synergy. So I think, and this is also why I made my channel, to kind of convey that synergy, equipment synergy, is really the most important thing that you need to make a successful system, to create an audio system that creates a sound that will take you in the direction where you want to go with reasonable cost. And what he's asking for here is that money is not a problem. I have a friend, and he has unlimited money, and he, instead of thinking just and looking for good synergy and looking for sound advice, just wants to max out his expenditure and create the best sound like that. And the issue is that he won't create the best sound. He will just have a hodgepodge of a system, and throwing in a big name speakers, I mean big name amplifiers. He wants to like a Kondo or a Vavac, and that just because you throw in a big name, it doesn't mean that you will have anything that you want. It's not good. So kind of like the situation that he describes here is like almost like having like these guys like a Kondo and a Vavac. If you think that I want to see an athlete, and I'm giving the athlete who is really good in all sorts of athletic things, but put him in a heavy gym, and no, you want a bodybuilder in a heavy gym to shine, and for the athlete you don't want to put the athlete in those conditions. However, that TADCR1X, I really didn't know about that, so I just looked it up. It's not as bad as you would think. Like not that sort of speaker who usually people who have like no money issues and can throw unlimited money, they end up with ridiculously obscene speakers that have like impedances like below 2 ohms, like dropping to 1 ohm or things like that. Usually that today that's what it means to have an expensive speaker, is that it has just almost like a short like a shorted speaker or a speaker with shorted drivers or partially shorted drivers. Here we have like the woofer part is flat at 4 ohms, which is really decent, and the upper section is more like has like dips to like a short little below 6 ohms, but you see that they are flatlining to a different baseline, like a 4 ohm versus like a 6 ohm, and that's already tells you that this is not the most fortunate circumstance for a triode to drive, but it's not impossible. But if you want the best sound, I wouldn't recommend a triode for this loudspeaker anyway. So if he just wants to force it, it's kind of like, okay, you will get sound out of it, but that loudspeaker and these amplifiers is just such a gross mismatch that it's just a waste of time. So if that body wants that with a set, that's not a good thing really. Let me just go back here because let's look at oh, Kansas City. UPs from Kansas City. Oh, it's stormy there. Here I'm really lucky because even though it's like really gloomy, but at least it's not stormy. What did happen just now? Oh, I paused myself. So because I'm checking also my live stream here, so that's why it's looking so funny on the screen, because oh, yep. So let's just go back from here to this original discussion about how to create the system the way people just go on about, and you know, the terrible thing about is that it's just there's like tons of reviews online, and people putting on systems like that, and people are none the wiser. It's just like a complete facepalm in my idea, because the idea behind using like a super expensive amplifier is that that thing like this Kondo and Vavac, so those engineers who created them are like created them like, if we are thinking about amplifiers like swords, like, and people who create them are like sword makers. the idea behind that is that the more resources a sword maker has, he'll be able to create a better sword. And these guys, like at that level, like Kondo Kagura, they created like a super katana, and uh, and uh, and they need to be used like specifically for how you use a katana. So you need a samurai to wield those katanas, and essentially to have a good use for them, you need to have the knowledge of a samurai to apply these amplifiers. And people are just applying it like in a total non-aggressive fashion, kind of like here this would be request would be an equivalent that, oh, I need a katana to, to take care of my garden, to just mop around the leaves, and to shape the tree, to cut leaves and stuff. But no, you need gardening tools for that. You don't need a katana. And why waste like $1 million on a meteorite steel, katana made from meteorite steel, while all you need is a shearing prunes and stuff like that, and a broom and whatnot, and a rake. And what other options can be considered? No solid state. Please looking for set options primarily. So actually, I like this post because he is asking like, okay, maybe not single-handed trial is the best. What else? And that's really great. I think his body just wanted to have the high power set because he thought that maybe that might be the best option for those speakers, but really it's not, because high powered set might be a good idea, but not with those speakers. And he doesn't want solid state, and I know there can be a lot of discussions here whether we want solid state or not, and it's a lot based on like listening preferences, what you can hear, how's your hearing. I per myself, what I noticed based on my own experiences, that if you are one of the few cursed people who can hear up to 20 kilohertz, and I call this not a gift, a curse in the world of audio, because I have this curse. I really can hear like up to 20 kilohertz, or at least I recently, like a couple of months ago, just done a fun test by myself, that switching between 19.2 kilohertz and 19.6 kilohertz tones, and I could easily, clearly hear the difference between 19.2 and 19.6 kilohertz. I didn't even had to force myself, kind of like dee-doo, like the way you can hear the difference between these two. That's how obvious was for me, 19.2 versus 19.6. But the problem there is that what I found, that solid state amplifiers universally, the whole genre, do something in that region that makes them just unlistenable to me. And it's not like unlistenable or like some sort of weirdo or something, but there's something unpleasant in the high frequency that makes the sound just draining and fatiguing over time. And initially I might find it like kind of showy or grand, or agree with people, wow, this sounds pretty peculiar, pretty awesome, pretty fantastic, but there is something in the sound that just in the high frequencies that just wears down my hearing, and it's just something that unnatural that I don't hear with live sounds. And when we measure with equipments, the way the microphone hears it, the way the computers break down the sound in the high frequency range, the consequences, what they say, that okay, for me, how I measured it in the amplitude and phase domain, that makes sense to me as a computer. But how the brain measures it, there's whatever discrepancies it has that doesn't show up with the microphone measurements. For the ears, it's not good. And I think partially it's not good because it's not just, or hearing doesn't stop at 20 kilohertz. When you look into papers, you will find that really our hearing goes up to at least 60 kilohertz or even 75 kilohertz, and there is some indication as well that we can hear above 100 kilohertz, and that's not with our auditory system, with the top of our skull. So that's where we can hear the 100 plus kilohertz range, that your skull starts vibrating with the ultrasound, and the ear picks up the sub-frequencies, sub-harmonics of the ultrasound, and that's how you can hear bats, for example. And for me, like, since I was a kid, I could hear bats, and echolocation, yeah, that's a real thing. So to me, like, hearing bats is like I hear like a peak, and it's like crystal clear which direction that peak came from. It's kind of like pointing a laser in the sky, and there's the bat. And it's funny because I've been always like telling it to my friends when I was a kid, parents, like, oh, there's a bat. How do you know? It's loud and clear. It's over there. Where is it? Oh yeah, it's there. Can you hear it? No. But I think that's probably more of an issue with solid state, that the 100 kilohertz range, it's not really investigated as much, and maybe that's what contributes to problems as well, to just wearing down your auditory system, because when you look at listening fatigue, it is not purely based on the sound pressure level, because it's not it's not the SPL that wears down your brain, but it's how much brain power you need to process the information, and where there's a lot of distortion in the sound. And I'm not talking about THD, I'm talking about echoes, about artifacts that we hear from natural sound as well. So when there's a sound source like me doing that there are the distortions added by the room, how the room reflections come, because there's like a gazillion room reflections that the sound originates here, and it bounces off from everywhere. And even if I just remove these curtains from here, from the side, that will change the character of this sound a lot. And that's because of all of these distortion or alteration components that the room adds, change. And the brain does like 1 trillion calculations per second to analyze these components, to break down what was the original sound and what are those aspects that create the 3D position of the sound. Because we cannot hear 3 dimension, we hear left channel, right channel, and no spatial information there. We just hear left channel, flat, right channel, flat, and whatever alterations there are, the brain calculates the 3D position of the sounds. And when the audio equipment has some spurious artifacts of its own, created by all kinds of feedback loop artifacts, it's going to wear down your brain significantly. If you do not hear on in certain frequencies, it doesn't mean that your brain doesn't do any processing in those regions, there's a lot of data that even for people who said that, who reported, oh, I don't hear anything above 16 kilohertz, but there was this study, they measured their brain activity, and still they had brainwave activity even when they heard 50 kilohertz content, but they are just unaware that there's any kind of sound going on there. However, if you are aware that something is going on there, it will engage your brain a lot more, and that's why you just get worn out by those frequencies. And when you do not hear frequencies that you heard before, that's because your brain is constantly being worn down by exposure to those sounds. And to protect yourself, the body is regulating down how much processing power it does to process those frequencies, and it's cutting down. So that's why it's not a good idea to listen to fatiguing equipment, because it's going to lead to hearing loss. And it's not because the sound hurts your ears and parts of your ear will die off because of that. You need extreme, beyond extreme sound pressure level for that, that even like a loud concert doesn't expose you to that level. But your brain will regulate itself down, so to actively cut you off from analyzing those frequencies, from basically transmitting frequency information from your microphone, your ears, to higher processing centers in the brain. Yeah, because this is how, as humans, how as biological organisms we work. The brain tries to automate as many processes as possible, and that includes hearing, processing of hearing. And automation means that your awareness, your focus doesn't need to be there. You can focus on other things. And sadly, our lifestyle taught our brains to focus on the visuals, to focus on that. So that's why when I make my videos, usually a lot of comments I get, or I got, is about why I am not looking at the center of the camera, and people are not paying attention to what I say, but they are paying attention to what they see. And there are a lot of comments like, wow, how could I improve the quality of my video? And those advice that would really be relevant to the person asking this question, that remains unheard, because our brain is so much focused on our automatic behavior that we don't notice what the important things, because the brain tries to tell you what is important, and the visual part of our attention or visual focus is just so strong that everything else just stays in the background. And this is also true for music listening. So for stereo systems that generate additional visual cues that turn the acoustic experience into an overly visual experience, so they engage your visual cortex more and more, will be deemed by your attention as a better sound, as a better sonic experience. And I think this is why we are having problems today with the audio world, because it's way too visual, and it just hijacks our attention to go to develop our systems into a certain way that's not going to ultimately be fulfilling for you, because making something overly visual, over accentuating those auditory cues that make up for the 3D imaging, 3D perception, and exaggerating them so that you see like an extremely focused 3D image that has very little to do with a natural concert, natural sound. So when you have like people speaking in your room, playing a guitar in your room, that sounds very different from the guitar played in an overly laser imaging system. And of course, I think it's beautiful that we have different experiences, but generating those cues also means that it's distorting aspects of the high frequencies, and it's going to cause fatigue for you. It's going to cause degradation in the high frequency perception, which is ultimately going to limit your experience on how you experience sound. So let me just go back to see. Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking at the comments, at the chat section. So Tiago says, are 45 amps in general less dynamic than say 300B ones? Many people say that you need 100 dB per watt meter speaker to be able to appreciate 45 amp, even if you listen to low volumes. What do you agree? Yes, I do agree 100% for that. I think about dynamics, the 45s can be made, if you put on the same effort to create an amplifier, a 45 amp will be more dynamic than a 300B, given that you have that efficient loudspeaker. And I would recommend, yeah, at least 100 dB watt meter for a 45 amp. Although I have a friend who has a 45 amp, who has the Yamamoto amp, and he has a void pipe, a Fostex void pipe with a 6-inch Fostex driver. That's what he listens to, and actually it sounds great. But he is not using it to generate like a mega scale sound. He listens to at low volumes, and it sounds absolutely beautiful at those volumes. Really gorgeous sound. But in his case, like a 300B would be able to create a much louder output as well. But that's not what he wants, but others might want that. Now we are talking about like a 92 dB efficient loudspeaker. So that's quite a lot less than 100. Now my other friend who had the same amplifier, he had 102 dB efficient or sensitive. The efficiency of that would be like 10%. So 102 dB sensitive horns. There, it just, for an average audiophile, the same amp, we could tell it was like 1 billion times more dynamic. It wasn't capable just to deliver like a quiet, beautiful sound. Listen to at low, much lower than live concert levels, just much. It's so low that when you speak normally in a quiet voice, that's what the level the music was playing, and that's what he wanted to play, and it sounded beautiful. And for those people who say, no, you must listen to at the same level where it was recorded because that was the intention of God or the creator or God knows what. I think I call a major BS on that. Listen at the level where you want to listen to, because you are not creating an audio system for a panel of judges. You are creating an audio system for you, and you listen to what the hell you want to listen to, or what the heaven you want to listen to. And what the heaven you want to listen to might be hell for someone else, and another person's hell might be the heaven for you. That's why this is a human experience. We are not machines like 0, 1 working in our brains. We are humans with the biological computers, and biological computers have preferences that the brains, your hormones, your thoughts, your emotions tell you what is it that you want from life. And when you want from life, a sound that you don't have to push the SPL limits, you don't have to push the fatigue limits of your ears. If that's your preference, then that's your preference. And there, the 45 will, I think, will be absolutely beautiful, and will sound at those volumes a lot more dynamic than a 300B, created with equivalent skillship, equivalent mastership. Because if you have a 45 tube that's amp, using the 45 tube, that's kind of okay, but you can create a 300B that is at a much higher level, that will sound much more dynamic than the 45. But if you use the same skill level, similar cost expenditure, then I think the 45 sounds more dynamic. The 300B has this lush tonality. It's like really like you are laid back and you just bask in the mid-range. So that's 300B. It's like a beauty of mid-range, and the 45 has this clarity. So like it's like razor clear, and the sobriety. So it's like kind of like, to me, it's like really sober, like you are on high alert, and it puts you in a totally different mindset than the 300B. 300B like makes you like just totally relax and enjoying the beauty, and just run away with your thoughts, and just experience the human voice in like going down to memory lane. It can be just absolutely beautiful. The 45, it's like kind of like cuts out all of that. It just it creates. I don't even have good words on how to say the difference between these two, but I think the 300B and the 45 sound, they are night and day. And the way the 45 sounds, that conveys a lot more of the dynamics than the 300B does. So like the difference between like the super quiet and the super loud. So great macro dynamics and micro dynamics as well. And when you have 100 dB sensitive loudspeaker, then it's able to convey like pretty loud and pretty quiet as well at the same time. So that's when you will enjoy the dynamic range of a 45. When you have like a lowish efficiency speaker in the 90s, like low 90s, then you won't get the impression that the 45 is a dynamic machine. So in that level, you can listen to all kinds of things quietly, but if you have like 102 dB efficient speaker, then you can even listen to like a cantate domino, which is like a church music playing organ, giant choir, and you are in a cathedral, and it's like that level of experience that you hear. Like the whole chorus is singing at the top of their lungs, and the orchestra at the top of their lungs, and then the organ do 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 do, and it's like boo, like the organ coming up. You have to weigh the dynamics, the scale, everything, and the 45 is just absolutely gorgeous at rendering them. Olanzip MK2, have you ever come across Audio Shrink? His name is Dave and based in Canada. No, I never heard of Audio Shrink. Oh, interesting. Sounds like a fascinating name. And then Ben from Harlem. I watch Dave regularly. He's very interesting because the gear he had. Philo. Hey Janos, any extra short speaker cables better than regular length? I have 20 centimeter long cables to my speakers, pure silver, 2 millimeter gauge at each terminal. So actually, usually the length of the speaker cable for silver, the general rule is the shorter and the thinner, the most benefits it can convey to you. So I think it's a really great idea. What can happen also is that you just have to watch out, because some speakers might just need a certain length of cable to create a balance between the amplifier and the loudspeaker. But for silver, generally, I noticed that the shorter, the better. Uh, where I would be a little bit more vary with the speaker length than not is in the case when you have a multi-driver speaker and you have a very short speaker cable, and then inside the speaker the cable length for the tweeter and the cable length for the woofer are drastically different, then there might be some unbalance created. But we can also factor in the crossover parts, because when you have a choke, you have like a gazillion meters long coil added to it, so that also can affect the mixture. Play around with length, I would say. That's what I noticed. However, the good thing with length is that based on the length, you are also tuning your speaker cable to behave as a better or worse antenna to the EMI in your house. And picking certain cable length, 1 meter for example, or 2 meter or 50 centimeters, you are creating the perfect antenna to pick up the generally worst offenders from your environment. And if you use something like that 20 centimeter length, that is a whole lot better than the 25 centimeter length, which is like half of 50, half of 1 meter. So all of that 1 meter and halving it down and doubling it up, any length will also be a really effective antenna for those offending frequencies. And if you just go a little off, like 80 centimeter or 1.5 meter, or like instead of the 25 centimeter, you go to 20 centimeter or 32 centimeter, you will gain a lot from that. So I think it's a good idea to have as short speaker cables as possible. Try it out, and I think it does work. Eventually, the shortest I tried was about the 80 centimeter size, um, and that sounds to be working pretty well. Hello, Hoops. Good morning. I'm glad you're here. Steve, Will, do you think closing your eyes can reduce listening fatigue? Um, yes, it can. It can reduce listening fatigue quite a bit, and that's because uh, we have a certain amount of brain processing power, and most of it, like 80% of the processing power the brain has, is shunted towards the visual cortex. And when we close the eyes, then a lot of that 80%, like the majority of your CPU power, now it's free. It's freed up, and it's freed up for the hearing, for your tactile senses, for your smelling, taste, etc. And with that, you are becoming more aware of what you hear. You have more power to hear that, and I think it won't really reduce listening fatigue, but you will be much more acutely aware that there's distortion in the sound, there's fatigue in the sound, and you can turn off that offending sound before it creates harm to your hearing. Because the problem with listening fatigue is that we are not consciously aware the sound is fatiguing, we are only becoming aware of it at that point where it already has produced harm. So I think it's in a kind of an interesting way that that mm, that closing the eyes reduces fatigue. It doesn't exactly reduce fatigue, but it prevents fatigue by being more aware. And what I've been doing, my grandpa was a musician, and when I was a little kid, he taught me, like, János, just when you listen to music, close your eyes. So from like early childhood on, from like 4 or 5 years age, I've been listening to music with closed eyes. And once you develop like a lifetime habit of listening with closed eyes, even when I open my eyes, my focus, my attention to what I hear is much deeper compared to what people's attention levels are who always listen with open eyes. Because when your eyes are open, your focus is on the visuals, on what you see. And for example, in the case of stereo, your number one focus when you're listening to a system is what you see. And that's why there's that a general preconception in the stereo world that the price of the equipment and how it looks like, it creates an overly big impact on a placebo effect, on just duping people that to thinking that they hear a good sound. Because actually it's happening, because people, the first thing that you get is the visual cues. And most people, when you have trained your brain to be a 100% visual person from early childhood, that we rely mostly on what we see. Our education taught us to judge everything based on what we see. In that case, that's how your brain tries to interpret the sound. Yeah, it must sound good because it costs $100,000. And but when you retrain your brain and you train it, okay, I'm focusing on the sound, not the visuals, like what I've been doing since I was like, since I know that I've been listening to music actively from like 4-year-old time. I've been intentionally listening to the music and not watching the visual cues. And I remember, like, even when I was a kid and we went to a concert, like, or it bothered the heck out of me that my mom was always, oh, what are those, what is the violinist wearing, oh, look at that, oh, oh, and like how people look, what do they wear, and stuff like that, how the stage looks like. I don't care, I'm just listening to the music. So I never understood why people are distracted by the visuals. And you know, if the thing looked nice, everyone dressed really nice, then it doesn't matter that much for most people how they play that symphony, because they're going to judge it based on how it looks. But to me, maybe it was just my training from grandpa. It's always been just purely to the sound for me. And when you, even if you don't have this habit, I would extremely warmly recommend to everyone to start listening with eyes closed. It's never too late to pick up a habit. And I think this is the number one habit for all audiophiles. And if you want the biggest change in your audio life, then it's not be had by a condo amplifier or the world's most expensive loudspeaker or solid state amplifier, but it's by just closing the eyes and start to listen. Because, and you will notice that once you close your eyes, after a while, it becomes like a really different, really transformative experience, how you experience sound. And once you get into the habit, the more and more deeper you can get into the perception of sound. And let's see, let's go with the questions. Have you listened to push-pull 45s? Rick G is asking, what is your opinion of such an amp driving 94 dB speakers? Actually, I haven't heard push-pull 45s. I heard push-pull 2A3 versus 2A3, and I also heard like lots of push-pull versus single-ended of the same type. And what I noticed is that the push-pulls just have way better time driving the same loudspeakers. You get like way more dynamics, or the perception of dynamics. And part of it is that is psychoacoustics as well, because when you have a single-ended triode, the primary THD component is second harmonics, and that creates like a relaxed sound for it. And it doesn't mean that the second harmonic will be always there when you have a single-ended triode. It means that when you are pushing it, when you are demanding it to have high output, then the second harmonic will rise. So it means that the sound will become more lush and more expansive and effortless. And up to a certain point, this is really nice, because it means that as we are increasing the sound pressure levels, the amplifier is working for you to cut down on the listening fatigue, on the perceived listening fatigue. Of course, when you push it beyond a certain point, so you have like a 2-3% second harmonic THD, then your brain starts to interpret it as not like a lack of listening fatigue or ease in listening fatigue, but as just sluggishness and lack of dynamics. However, when we use the exact same tubes in push-pull configuration, the second harmonic will be lower in comparison to the third harmonic. So they are primary, the same tube, single-ended versus push-pull configuration, second harmonics and third harmonics will change priority. So, and with the third harmonics, it creates the psychoacoustic illusion of being more dynamic. So just that by itself of having a push-pull topology will tell your brain that when the music gets louder, as the third harmonic creeps up, it creates the illusion that the music is actually getting even more louder than it is actually getting. So to have the same impact of macro dynamics as the live event had, you don't have to play it at the exact same volume. You play it a little bit lower volume, because that added third harmonic distortion will create the acoustic illusion that I'm already listening at that dynamic range where the original event happened. So just that effect, playing them even at the exact same volume, even if you are not pushing the amplifiers, the push-pull version will sound more dynamic because of this psychoacoustic effect. And let's see. And I think like a push-pull 45 with 94 dB speakers, that will be quite a lot. But even for those, I would recommend like 100 dB plus to hear the best of them. But I can say like most people listening habits, when you have a push-pull 45 with 94 dB speakers, that will create an experience where most people would give like 2 thumbs up. Yeah, this was really dynamic, could play really loud, and most people are happy with that. And only just the extra loud dB freaks would be unhappy with that scenario. In general, like 99 audiophile out of 100 would say, wow, this is like a perfect thing, and I don't need any louder than that. So push-pull 45 with 94 dB speakers will get, for most people, as loud listening levels as they want, unless either they have extremely large like a large room, because then if you go larger with your room, you massively have to scale up with the output power and speaker efficiency. But for a normal room like here mine, if I would put 94 dB speakers, push-pull 45, I would be happy with that. I wouldn't need anything more than that. Versus just a set 45, I would still be happy with it, but there will be times when, okay, I wish I could crank it up. And with the push-pull, yeah, you will have that. And not just because of the extra watts that the push-pull gives, and also the extra driving control over the woofer. So when you have a push-pull topology, naturally it has a much better ability to handle bass response. So it will mean that two things. One thing is that for the same speaker, you will get like a more controlled sound in the bass range. And number two is that you will have a wider range of loudspeakers that will sound pretty good with that push-pull amplifier. And a lot of cases, like for example, if someone notices it that I have a single-ended amplifier and I need feedback to make it have like a tight bass, then if you just change this amplifier to a push-pull amplifier with zero feedback, it will have as good control over the bass as the single-ended with the feedback had. Kylo Callis, what material is better for speaker pads underneath the spikes? Is brass better than bronze? I think brass and bronze are really close to each other, and for most cases, I don't even know if most people would hear a difference. It depends a lot on what the speakers are standing on. If it's standing on a wooden floor, probably you won't even notice much of a difference. It depends also on the speaker cabinet. Is it a dead cabinet or a live cabinet? Exactly what sort of. So there's just so many interactions going on that I think like between brass and bronze, difference might be absolutely minor and will be more due to the geometry of the spike and size of it, oh, you mean the pad under the spike, not the spike itself. So like a piece of bronze or brass slab under the spike. I think they're just too close enough, even as like something under the spike. Probably not much of a difference between brass and bronze. Like if you put like steel and brass or wood and brass, or that would be a bigger difference. Hoops, Harman Breakdown, great brand, best brand you've never heard from, Manchester, UK 2000. Harman Breakdown. Huh, interesting. Is it like wow. I think you are not Harman Kardon, right? I will look into that. Where were we? Home. I think I'm missing here a few things. Let me just see back. Play it loud, be proud. That's what I say. So, okay, I get it. So like Harman Kardon's, yeah. Actually, I think like Harman Kardon's used to be like quite decent, but it's been like many years since I listened to them. When I was a fledgling audiophile, I heard one or two, and at that sound I thought, wow, this is fantastic. But for sure, they can play loud and fun, and yeah, just be proud. Perfect. It's fun. Playback mention. Hey, hi Craig. My guitar teacher, Steve Suvada, emphasized listening with eyes closed. I believe there's an overlap in visual and auditory processing. Yep. There's huge. And I think like today a lot of amplifier brands, well, not just amplifier brands, but just the tendency how speakers and amps and systems are voiced, how they are voiced, goes a lot in that direction to build on this synergy between visuals and hearing. And the number one goal for audio development today in our decade is to transmit more visual cues through sound. And I think this has been the goal and the tendency for the past 50 years as well. But now we are at a stage where we are clearly driving the sound to be much more visual than the original live events are. Oops, if you really want to get an experience, listen on mushrooms. And there's a lot about that, because I think what I never tried mushrooms or mind-altering substances, but I did a lot of meditation and awareness training in my life, and I really can say that the number one thing that impacts your listening experience is your awareness, what your state of mind is. And I think there's like multiple ways of getting there. The best way is to train yourself so that you are aware enough that you become consciously aware of what you hear. Because what we hear the same thing all the time. And the neurons in our auditory system, they transmit the same information to the brain. Okay, when you are after a very loud concert, it means that those neurons transmitting the information are tired. They have oxidative damage, and they don't have enough molecules to transmit the information coming from your ears. And then everything hurts, it's too loud. Then you can't handle it because physically there is problem with the transmission. But after a while, your auditory system will regenerate and you'll be fine. But if you never hit that point where you critically deplete the molecular storage of your auditory system, then the same information is being transmitted to the higher and higher processing centers. But because of our awareness and our training, there's a very minimal level of information that's being transmitted to the highest level processing center at the point where you are conscious of what you are hearing. And this is the clue, that's the key, how you can improve your hearing, is that most people think that you improve it by getting better ears or making your ears better. That's not what improving the hearing is about. You have whatever auditory organs you have. When we improve our hearing, we improve the awareness. So everyone uses these terms to improve your hearing wrong, and that includes me as well. But I need to use it wrong so that people understand what I'm talking about. Because if I start staying in my videos, improve the awareness at which you listen to your stuff around you, no one will listen to it, and they will just skip through that, and they say, no, I'm not interested in that. I want to know how I improve my hearing. But exactly, that's how you improve your hearing, by improving your awareness. Because your hearing is not just your microphones, which are your ears, but it's your computer, which is connected to your ears. And that's what is telling you. So what you hear around you as noises, as music, as detail coming from the music, is not the same. So your mind, your conscious mind, is telling you that what I am conscious of, what's happening around me, that is what I'm hearing. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. You are hearing way more. It's that you are your mind, your conscious mind, or maybe your subconscious, lets you being aware of just a tiny fraction of that. And by training your mind, you will be able to be aware of of just an incredibly greater amount of information that's in the uh, uh, what your ears are registering. And that's a very long process, a lot of hard work, uh, and takes years and years and years to get better and better and better. And when people take like chemicals, hallucinogenic agents, that bypasses this training process, and then instantly through the effect of the drug you will become aware of a lot more of that information that is around you, and the drastic increase in the information that can reach the conscious, between that what's reaching it now under the influence of the substance versus the amount of information that reaches you normally, the difference between them is so vast that the brain tries to interpret it, and you have these hallucinations and visions because the brain doesn't have the experience basis on how to put the vast extra information, how to process it, and you are having a bunch of extra experiences you are normally not having, and some of it might not be actually how you would have it were you to get to that point of awareness on your own. Because when you get there on your own by doing meditation, increasing level of awareness, then you are in control of the chemistry of your brain. You know, you consciously made the decision to reach that state, and during the years of training you adapted to processing more and more of that information, becoming more and more aware, so you have developed the relevant brain centers, the higher level brain centers that can process that level of information. Now they are more and more, it's like training, it's like getting a better memory, being like knowing what, like 10 times 10, 100. So if you didn't learn it, didn't pay any attention to that, you won't know what 10 times 10 is. So like being more aware of what we hear is just like going to school and learning the basics. And when we do that, that's when just like what you listen to, it can transform. And even then, after these years of training, I don't hear like that all the time. Why not? Because I would go crazy if I were to do that like every hour, every day, because most of the noises, the sounds that we have in life, when I'm driving, when I'm at work, is just monstrous noise overload. I would be just going mental if I were constantly aware of the noises. I wouldn't be able to focus on the colleagues, on having actual discussions with them, on paying attention to my work, because I would be distracted by all of the noises and sounds that surround me at work or while driving. So that's why we limit our awareness to a pinpoint as far as the sound is concerned, because we need the visual cues to be focused on, what work we do, what the stuff we do, and the sounds that surround us have very little to do to our survival. And by being aware of the noise the air conditioning makes at work, and the sound of the machines, of your refrigerator humming, your computer fan buzzing, the sound your keyboard clicks make when you are typing, that's just would just waste a lot of brain power, a lot of awareness, a lot of concentration. So we shrink it down. So even when you have a training that you can expand your awareness and be aware of sounds and everything, even for me, if I during the week, Monday through Friday, I'm at work and I'm exposed to all of these freaking noises from the highway driving to staying at work. I have to switch my brain, my awareness to be in that mode. And for example, if there's like too much work related stress, then your brain won't let that switch happen easily, and then you won't be able, or I in my case won't be able to to enjoy music at the level I can, because the awareness is shrunk. And now I as like that, because I can listen to music both in this state when I'm just, maybe like in the middle of a really rough, really hard work period where like for months and months or years it's been a crunch and just drains the living soul out of you. When you listen to music like that, you hear a very, very different thing, or I hear an extremely different thing compared to like, okay, workload has been normal, and I'm in a happy, good shape, good physical shape. Things are going well, nothing stressful. Work is not falling apart, and then mind can expand, and I can experience the music as like a totally different person hearing it. Yeah. So back to mushrooms. I really would advocate for everyone just to go towards the path of working on the awareness on your own, which is just starts with closing the eyes and just consciously just doing the mental exercise of listening to the sound actively, and trying to analyze what you hear, what are the parts, and it will just play around with it. Don't think that it's hard work. Just think that it's fun. It's play around with it and experiment with it. When you do that, it will be really safe, and it's like practicing a muscle. It will get stronger over time. And when you use a mushroom or any chemicals, it will do the exact opposite. So it will just alter your brain chemistry over time more and more, and you will be less and less able to reach those states with your own conscious effort. And that's what I noticed, sadly, by looking at people who started just not just like trying out these substances for fun, but going deeply into them, is that they just start living in a different world, and they are not able to connect to society anymore, because it just hijacks their awareness, their attention, so that they really start living in their own world. And they experience, in all cases, they have experienced this as something beneficial, up to the crashing point where they realize that they cannot function in this world. They cannot maintain their life as they maintain. And I don't want to make this episode a story about that, but I know I have some close friends who went through like kind of like one of my friends has 3 death certificates issued to him because he had 3 death certificates because of substance. He used that much substances, but he was revived 3 times. But he was at a point that where they started filling out the death certificate already, because they thought, okay, they just stopped reviving him. Oh, you are dead. And then he just came back after a while, but after the doctors have given up on him 3 times. So it can get to that extreme. Yeah, his case is super extreme. I'm not saying that's what happens. In most cases, when someone overdoses on substances, game over, first try. You don't get 3 extra passes like he had. But okay. If Philo is saying, if I listen to digital source, should I add the preamp or should I stay with DAC straight to the amp? Ooh, it depends what digital, what amp, what preamp. I would say I use volume control from PC streaming service. I would say like the straighter path you can have, the less chance you have of having a problem. But if it's a solid state system, then adding a tube preamp, even in this case, can help with cutting down on the listening fatigue, on making the sound more natural, if that's what you need. So if it sounds, you want it to sound more natural and less fatiguing, then add the tube deck. But sadly, nowadays most of the decks on the market are really geared to sound like as clinical as possible, and they might even make the sound colder than natural. So this is why I am not into commercial products, because you really have to be kind of almost like super lucky to get the right component for your system. And even when you do, you really need to modify it to make it work well, to the level that's satisfactory to you. I would say that based on the commercial gear that I played with, but that's been like 20 years ago. For the past 20 years, I haven't played around with commercial gear, commercial synergy. So I'm not familiar with how like a present day commercial system would react to a present day preamp, but it's still my suspicion that if you throw in a tube preamp to the mix, then that can be beneficial, but it can be the other way around, depending on the system and the preamp. You might be just losing dynamics, impact, focus, but it's totally on a, I would say just try it out. If you can, like, borrow tube preamp from a buddy, try it out, and or if you can just get something and take it back, just play around and try it out. Playback mention, Craig, or attend an ayahuasca ceremony with live music. I think that's probably the best solution, and that's what you can get the most acoustic experience of. And yep, I agree with that. And hoops, get yourself a USB Purifier 3 reclocker, about 130, make your PC sound 10 times better. Oh, i5 USB Purifier. Huh, interesting. Thank you for the tip. Oh. Yeah, because I don't actually, like at work, I use my PC to listen to. Actually, at work I usually not listen to music. I listen to Zoom meetings through the audio system. So when you see my Lagrange and my Darling, I have my Zoom meetings at work through that, and that's just absolutely, it's a blast. Because when you have your phone and you listen to Zoom meetings through that, or just like your headphones or computer speakers, I myself, I just can't hear crap from that, because like usually we have like some big team meetings where there's like 10 people, 10 or 15 or maybe 20 online, and there's all sorts of noises, and then the bandwidth is really limited. So when people are speaking, it sounds more like clicks and pops, and sometimes some people like zoom in from home, and then you have the dog barking in the background, or the kids playing, or relatives talking to each other. And when you hear that through a phone or just computer speakers, that just, to me, because my brain processes everything I hear, the noise has the same priority from a Zoom meeting as the voice, because both of them are equally junk quality. And I have this type of primitive hearing where my brain actively wants to process everything. So when I'm on the phone, it's kind of useless. I can't hear anything. But I have a USB DAC at work, for the PC, and then that goes to the Darling amp and the Lagrange speakers, and I can hear everything crystal clear. Sometimes I invite my coworkers in for a Zoom meeting, and then we just crack up because you can hear like the kid, like yeah, like someone has a baby or a young child, and the child is doing something, and you can hear exactly what the child is doing, or who has a dog, what the dog is doing, and 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 I can hear like people saying, oh, I can't hear what that person is saying. Can anyone hear that? And then we say, yeah, we can hear it crystal clear. No problem there. So just have a blast, and maybe like try a recloaker on that and take it to the next level. But anyway, I think that is something I never played around with, reclocking decks. And Steve, Billy, I was thinking it might be fatiguing to listen to something closely that you weren't also seeing. A cognitive dissonance that could be avoided by closing your eyes. Yes, I think that's super powerful, because when people are listening to audio gear, uh, what I noticed is that when you are a beginner audiophile, then you are trying to make sense of the fact that you are not seeing the people in the room, or the violinist, or the drummer, but it kind of looks like visually there's a drummer who is invisible, and that doesn't make sense. So in the beginning stages of audiophilia, that's what one combats, like how to make sense of that. But there's also that part that's much more persisting, is that we are trying to make it that if you are seeing something that's more expensive, then you want it to sound better, or you make a bigger effort to appreciate the sound compared to hearing something cheaper. We can grow out of that very easy. For me, it was not a problem to grow out of that habit. You just need to be comfortable with all prices of gear, and then if you don't put extra value to the price of the gear, you don't put it on a pedestal, then it stops being on a pedestal and stops bothering you. And I think that's what I noticed, that when there's something that's particularly bothering someone, then it becomes a bothering problem. And I noticed that those people who are bothered by the price of the equipment, they have a problem to disassociate between the price of the gear and how it sounds. Some of them don't have a problem that, and they just have a problem that something that sounds crap is being sold for a higher price. That's a different category. But for the majority of people, what I noticed is that if when you listen to systems on a regular basis that cost an arm and a leg, and you start like putting in components that are much cheaper and see how they sound, or have a cheap system, put in a really expensive component. So once you just get rid of that rigid totem pole of hierarchy, that if it's like a $100,000 system, every component must be 10,000 or more. If you just get rid of that idea and just start playing around with different combinations, then you will kind of lose that attachment that you attach to a price tag of an equipment, and you will just start seeing the components on their own merit of how they and what they contribute to the overall soup, to the overall effect, to the overall synergy. And there's a third component of these visuals, how the visuals impact the auditory perception, is that how the system looks. So people have like a lot of stereotypes about transistor amplifiers, or tube amplifiers, or single-ended tubes, or one with feedback, zero feedback. And once they tell you what, or you see, or you think what you see, how it is, then you automatically associate it must sound this way. And you are focusing on auditory cues that will match with those preconceptions of yours, and you might limit or alter your awareness based on that. The same goes for loudspeakers. If it's like a small loudspeaker, you expect it to sound not as loud, not as dynamic, less bass, and when we hear more bass, like, wow, this speaker has just astonishing bass, and maybe it has much less bass than that giant speakers in the background, but because you are hearing like twice as much bass from those tiny speakers than you normally hear, you think that you are actually hearing a lot more bass than what you are hearing. And that's another consideration. So our visuals are trying to trick us many ways, and there's a lot of dependencies there. And I think that's why it's such a good idea just to listen with closed eyes, and that goes both for live performances and audio system. And I think I've done this audio listening to such an extreme that when I go to someone's house, I just or a showroom, I just consciously block out what are the brand names, what's the model name, and and I just create a blank in my mind. And often, even if I want to recall, I cannot recall the exact model what I listened to. So when people ask me, oh, how does this sound, that sound, and actually what I can say is that I just block out what I listen to, and I recall I listened to the gazillion of stuff, this and that, but if it didn't sound good enough, I'm not going to investigate what that model was. Or maybe if it sounded really bad, I'm going to investigate, because then it's like, okay, and what made the sound different from what I hear usually? And then I look at it, and I'm not looking at the price tag, but I'm looking at the flags. What is unusual in this system? What made it sound different from what I would expect, provided I see something like that? And yeah, that's just me. And let's see. I think that another good trick is, if you've got a tape deck, you can plug your digital source from the deck into RCA and then play out into the amp and leave it on. So I think you mean like you play through the tape, right? Yes, that was one of my first audiophile experiences when CD came out. Yay! I was around at that time, and I had friends who had CD players, and actually I taped the CD because I didn't have a CD player, so I created like a copy on a tape, and you always notice that the playback from the tape always sounds a lot better than when we play it from the CD directly. and at that time I didn't know what's happening, but it's getting rid of digital harshness, and also when you have that low-level tape hiss, that adds a low-level background noise, which is essential for the human brain. So to get an accurate dynamic perception for the brain, when you have a low-level constant sound, that will help the brain to calculate the dynamic range and to calculate the SPL that you are hearing. And the problem with digital is that often they make it so clear cut, especially when you have studio recordings. So when you have a studio, it's deadened. It's like much more like an anechoic chamber than a real live venue. Because when, for example, you are listening to a symphonic orchestra, the equivalent to that tape hiss is that noise in the room, that people fidgeting, people breathing in, breathing out, all those noises that our muscles make. So actually most people are not aware, but your body is constantly creating about 60, 70, 80 dB loud 20 to 30 hertz sound. Just the muscles naturally contracting create a pretty loud sound. And when you have like hundreds of people, they just their physical presence adds a lot of that nearly subliminal experience of baseline sound. And then you would say, no, I don't hear that. No, you consciously don't hear that, but in like the 20 hertz frequency and below 20 hertz frequency, in that region, what the brain picks up is like 40, 50 dB below the audible level. So when someone is standing behind you, even if the person doesn't move, doesn't breathe, just by standing there, just the muscles twitching at 20 to 30 hertz, that is loud enough that your subconscious, that your brain picks it up, that there's someone behind you emitting those frequencies, and you know about that. And if you train your awareness, you can become aware of it. So that's how, when you have like martial artists being aware of what goes around them, is because they have better access to those subliminal information around them. And you need this low level of sound around you for your brain to calculate, to measure the louder sounds, and also to measure the sounds which are quieter to them than that. And that's where a lot of the dynamic range and noise floor calculations and expectations are dead wrong, because when you have a noise floor for analog like a tape hiss, when you have sounds which are just as faint as the tape hiss, you can still hear them. And actually the quieter a noise is, when you add the tape hiss, you can hear it better, because it helps, the brain needs it to process the sound. And I don't know if people are aware of, but like there are the spy microphones that agencies are using to hear like what people are speaking like a mile away, and they have that shotgun microphone pointing at them, listening to what they say, and yeah, you can hear something, but it's inaudible, and you cannot, and not inaudible, you can hear it, but you cannot make out the words what the people are saying. And when they add a low-level noise like a tape hiss to that input, then you can understand the words they are saying. And that's another factor why adding that tape hiss or taping a digital input improves the perceptibility of the sound. It doesn't improve what you measure, it will measure worse compared to no tape hiss, but for your brain, you will be able to perceive the low-level information a whole lot better when there's low-level tape hiss there. And it's not like what is the actual dynamic range that a microphone can pick up, that a computer can calculate, that has not direct relevance to how your brain will be able to process the information in that range. Whether you will be able to tell the fine, minute details of the violin, or someone speaking, whispering very softly on that recording, that will be greatly enhanced if you have that low-level, super low-level tape hiss. Depends also on the type of tape, metal and bias correctly. Yeah, so when you have different types of tapes and different biases, then this noise can be like more bothersome, that it attracts your attention, or something like really subliminal, where it's like not part of the acoustic information, so your brain is not trying to process it as something standalone, but it's processing it as part of your natural environment. And that's what we want to play around with, to make it sound like being part of natural. And that's what they are doing in studios. I can confirm that. I have my buddy Tajtos, and he just recently made a CD not CD, just a digital recording. He also issued it on CD as well. But and that's what they're doing currently as well, is that they have the option to record on tape or just record the digitally recorded material on a tape. And yeah, he tried it out, and it sounds a whole lot better, a whole lot more natural and organic and closer to how he heard his own playing when it's run through a tape. It's not so much third harmonics, it's more fifth and eighth that gives you air space. Third harmonics is not good, that is digital sound harshness, you want to reduce that. Yeah, actually, if you go like higher harmonics, they give you a much more shaded appreciation of yeah, air and space. So five through eight, it's more like the air type. The third is like kind of like a raw stretch dynamics. It's not refined, nothing like that, but when you have extra third, it will sound, actually I think it will sound thinner, and a lot of people perceive it as more dynamic. But when it gets to be on a certain point, it's going to be bothersome and thin. But before it hits that point, we will think that it's more dynamic than what it is. When we have like 5 through 8, that's more sublime, but it gets well, the higher we go with harmonics, the more complex and complicated the effects are, and the more they alter the tonality of the sound as well. And depending on the type of music you listen to, it might be a non-issue, or it might be like a really big issue. Like if you want to get like how a violin's tone is, and that's why like when you have like a set or a system that doesn't have as much, just like has totally minimal distortion beyond the second and third order, then you can appreciate something like a violin's tone or a guitar's tone better, because these instruments naturally have a character of those really higher order tonal scale, and then when we are skewing with that, it can get like really altered. Twin power Harman Kardon are excellent low feedback amps receivers. Yeah, I think Harman HK, they used to make a lot of good gear. My mentors too, he used to carry Harman Kardon, and I think the HK got bought up with a conglomerate, and since then it's not as good as it used to be. But for the price they were selling, I think they were used to be like really solid, good stuff. How are you looking at the idea of putting gold on silver cables, since gold has less electrical conductance than silver? I think I never tried it for slightly obvious reasons. Eventually, it might be a good idea for the point of preventing oxidation of the silver. So even though it has less conductance than silver, but I think it might, I'm not even sure, it even have less conductance than silver oxide, because like silver oxide is still about as good conductor as fine copper. However, only if you are lucky, then your silver gets oxidized into silver oxide. And that only happens when there's no organic matter present in the vicinity, which there is. You are there. So if you are there, there's sulfur that's going to be released and getting in contact with the silver. And when that happens, then silver will oxidize in not just to silver oxide, but silver sulfide. And that one is a really bad conductor. So that's what we want to prevent. So when you have silver and it's tarnished and it turned black, that's the silver sulfide. If it turns white, that's the silver oxide. And the white scenario, that's that's the preferable one, but sadly that's usually not what's happening. And if you coat silver with gold, then it won't oxidize at all. And it might be initially not as good sounding as a pure silver wire, but within a month you will have enough oxidation on the silver cable that it will be audibly worse sounding than the gold coated silver cable. Tiago, nice discussion on the 45 tube, thanks. Which gauge do you think is the optimal for the CCSWP interconnect? I think what I found the best is like 32 gauge. I would say like 30 is the absolute minimum. There's a small change between 30 and 32 gauge, but like between 30 and 28 there's a hyper massive jump. So if you go from 28 to 30, the 30 sounds way better. Philo is asking, are short power cables on monoblocks a good idea? Yes, they are. I think that they are. Eventually on my monoblocks I have about how long they are, about 120 centimeter long, and I found them way better than the 2-meter long versions. And on my deck I have, because my deck is really close to the outlet, so my deck's power cord is about 30 centimeters, and there, like, changing it from like a 2-meter to 30 centimeters was like a revelation. So it can be quite a lot beneficial. So I think just go for it, try it out. I was thinking of making some DIY pure silver power cables. Yeah, I think it will work really beautifully. Lamb 18-watt monoblocks. Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, so actually my DEX power cord that's also silver, and it was just really mind-blowing, the difference when I put that in. And it's not just like compared to a regular cable, like compared it to a Kimber Palladian, and it was a whole lot better, like a night and day jump up from the Kimber Palladian. Steve is saying, I think Hobbs was suggesting just to use tape deck on pause as a preamp. Actually, yeah, that's another interesting thing. Janosch's tangent on the importance of the noise was interesting. So thank you. And just using it as a preamp, I noticed that too, that I can't say universally if it's true or not, but I noticed that when I used my Nakamichi tape decks as a preamp just to run it through, digital sounds a whole lot better. It's just crazy. I don't know what those Nakamichi engineers did. And yeah, I know I'm putting like a whole bunch of electronics in the path, but it does something. Even to use it as like as a volume control preamp, it just works beautifully. You just put a tape on it, you hit to record, but don't play yet. Just put it on standby and just loop it through. It just doesn't make much sense, but it works. They did some secret sauce there. And probably I haven't played around with reel-to-reel to see how that happens, but certainly with several Nakamichi tape decks I've noticed that happening. So anyone can try that. Just pick up a cheap NAK used tape deck and try it out as a preamp and see how it goes. Tiago is saying, a channel called Alpha Audio made a lot of measurements on RCA cables with nice equipment and claimed to find correlation from measurements and sound quality. Have you seen it? I haven't seen that. Alpha Audio. Yeah, I think that's my experience as well. That cable geometry, the dielectrics, the conductivity of the wire, how the strands are, the thinness, the thickness, annealing, everything, all of these mechanical and physical properties do have a certain and predictable impact on the sound. And I'm not really surprised that it's really measurable and corresponding to what we hear. I think what the big problem is with the audio cables, especially, is that there's a lot of companies who are murking the waters and just using I would say sometimes like inappropriate technology or inappropriate advertising to create really high resale prices for said products, and that kind of like creates a really bad feel for a lot of people, that if someone is being a kind of like a thief or just tricking you, then everyone must be tricking you. No, that's not true. But that's how life is in general. There are shysters and thieves and malintentioned people who are trying to take advantage of you in every area of life. Look at politics. Look at even at YouTube. Look at the advertisements, commercials. 80% of that, probably more, is just trying to dupe you to get something that you don't need to pay, or maybe you need it, but they want you to pay much higher price for it or get a version that you don't need. That's how marketing works, and that's how human nature works. That people want to, get more for less. And why wouldn't that be true for cables in particular? Yes, it's true for cables. It's true for cars. Think about the car salesman. It's there everywhere, and I'm not even upset about it, because that's how life is, and we just have to be mature enough to grow beyond that stage, just to realize that that's what's happening, and then just try to dig. Okay, what is happening here? Is it really that good to spend that much money on it or not? And can I replicate it by myself for a fraction of the price, or can I not? And then that's how I ended up with what I'm doing, and why I am just DIYing everything, all of my cords, because when using the knowledge of how the properties of the insulators are, how the properties of the conductors are, the geometry, connectors, I can create something that sounds comparable, sometimes a little worse, sometimes a whole lot better than what a given amount of money can buy. And there's also the added benefit that I have a lot of fun while I am doing these things. And I'm focused on what other fun I can have by building it in a different way. And when you are just into just purchasing cables, then your focus is on, was I duped or wasn't I duped? Was it a good deal or wasn't it a good deal? Let's go on Audiogon or somewhere and just buy and trade, and your life and your brain is just hijacked about buying and selling stuff, and having being addicted to the adrenaline rush when you bought something that's like at a fraction of the price that it sells normally, and then you kind of like I won. It's kind of like jackpot. And then you, after you got it, and then realize, oh, it doesn't sound as good as I expected, and then you have buyer's remorse. So you are riding this gravy train of emotions related to buying and selling stuff. So you are addicted not to getting a better result, but addicted to these emotional fluctuations, for the chase, for the hoarding maybe, or just owning something, and you can just alter it. I have altered it to the point that I am focused on just on the journey, on just creating knowledge for myself, sharing that knowledge with you, and just having fun during the process, and not being worried about what did I do with $10,000 that I don't even have. It's just like, okay, I bought like a piece of tape, bought like this tiny roll of silver wire and made some fun cables with it, and it sounds great. And is it better than XYZ company's $200,000 cable? I don't give a fudge about it. Is it better or not? I don't care. It sounds fun, it sounds great, and whatever I compared it with, I was never disappointed. So I think that's why to me audio is something beautiful. It's a fun hobby, and I hope that this mindset is contagious. Okay. Tiago is saying they found no correlation between resistance, inductance, and capacitance and sound quality, though, which made sense for me. I think it's like this thing is so all of these factors factor in, but they don't just factor in that if the resistance is higher or lower, does it make a difference? This way they interact with each other and they interact with your gear. So when we need to put it in context with the like input sensitivity, like the output impedance of the source, how one loads the other, what is the output device, is there feedback, local feedback, global feedback, no feedback, transformer output, direct coupling, capacitor coupling, what's happening there. All of that just massively alter these parameters, whether it's just the those three. Plus, if usually we cannot just only just change the resistance of the wire, and that's when you change the resistance of their other properties are also changing. Either the diameter of the wire is changing, and then the ratio of the insulator on top of the wire to the wire, that's changing as well. Or you change the length of the wire to create a lower resistance, and then you alter what the EMI pick up from the environment is, what frequencies it picks up. So it's just, there's just so many parameters, and they just so much interdependence that just one value or two values out of three, or even these three values by themselves, they are not predictive of better or not. Philo is asking, are you aware of the volume controls on the streaming services? Are they degrading the sound quality by decreasing the bit rate? I'm not really that much into streaming, but yeah, so when you decrease the bit rate, then actually what happens is the amount of information that's turned to sound is getting rougher and rougher. So like the entirety that you hear is now, like, instead of like 20 bits is now like 17 bits, or if it was like a 42 bits, now it's like down to maybe like 17 bits if it's like much quieter. And so it's becoming a much rougher ladder. And for if you put a microphone and measure it, for it is fine. It will think that there's no change between the two because they measure in an absolute scale. But your hearing is adaptable. And when you listen to half the volume, your ears and your awareness will adapt to that, and will look at it at a similar resolution that it looks when it's much louder. So yes, that like, let's say 42-bit depth versus 17-bit depth will be quite a bit different for your perception, provided one is aware enough, as what I just told in the beginning. If you come from work and you drove for an hour on the highway, traffic noise, etc., you probably likely won't notice any difference. But you are in the zone, or maybe you are using your favorite mushrooms, then it will be noticeable quite a bit. Oh, and the sound had become quite a bit rougher. I think a simple algorithm for digital volume control will reduce the bit depth, not the rate. Yeah, I agree with that. It's just the bit depth is being reduced. The bit rate, I think that they reduce it only when the internet provider has some issues and they cannot provide that many bits. Uh, and on a side note, when you have like a lower bit content coming for you, then probably it will come at a lower bit rate, but not because the bit rate is limited, but because you are getting 17 bits instead of like 42 bits. That's the resolution depth. So indirectly, the two are kind of like interrelated. How are you looking at connectors, various ones? I tend not to use them, prefer connecting with bare wire even when I can. Yes, me too. Just like get rid of as many connectors as possible, because even a single connector is multiple metals. So there's like a base metal, which for the cheaper connectors is really junk base metal, and that's going to affect the sound the most, what the base metal's quality is. And there's like an outside coating and probably like a coating under between the base metal and the outside coating to make sure that the outside coating sticks. So there's like the base metal and something and maybe rhodium or gold, and usually when they put like rhodium, gold or silver, etc., it's just too thin to have a big impact on the sound. Most of the conductors will be defined by the base metal of the connector, which is usually not so good. So that's why there are some companies like Yamamoto who have these pure copper connectors, like high quality copper, and there's no base metal coating. The whole thing is just a block of copper. It's much more preferable and one step closer to like a direct connection. But the best is if you have no connectors at all, and that's how I made my system back then, like 20 years ago, when I had built my original Darling amp. Every wire silver inside, even the power cord silver, interconnect silver, and like I just hardwired the power cord into the amp, hardwired interconnects, hardwired, the toner wire from cartridge pin into the preamp, and everything hardwired. It just catapulted out to the stratosphere what kind of experience it provided and what kind of nuances of the sound. I was just so flabbergasted. The only thing that I heard can sound like that refined was like audio note level 5 stuff, and at its best, because some people report hearing them and they don't sound good. But if it's not set up, anything that you don't set up properly can sound pretty rubbish. But when it's set up, it just sounds like when people listen to it and they look like they have like a life-changing experience. So that kind of things. And I was not alone. So there's a friend of mine, Tom Choi. He's an audio dealer here in Hawaii, and he had a similar experience. So once he just hardwired his whole system, and he said it was just absolutely a staggering experience, like getting rid of all the connectors. So people in general are not aware how much connectors degrade the sound, and even compared to just using like some super expensive connectors, just get rid of it, just hardwire it directly. It will be even better than getting very expensive connectors. Of course, after that you won't be able to disconnect your system unless you desolder them, or if you have just like a manual connection so that you screw in the bare wire to the bare wire. So actually that's how I had my power amp. How I hooked up the speaker cable is that I had the silver wire coming from the transformer secondary, and I had the silver wire of the speaker cable, and I used 2 blocks of wood, and I crimped the two together with 2 blocks of wood, and those 2 blocks of wood were screwed together by 2 copper screws far away from the wires. So that was my connector, and I think that's the best there is. It's a little bit more involved to connect and disconnect than just, you know, like banana plugs or something like that, but a whole lot better and a whole lot cheaper. It's just elbow grease. Okay. More sophisticated digital volume or algorithms can hide this bit depth loss. Mm, yeah, and then they are reprocessing things, and I think this technology doing that has become a whole lot better than it used to be. But still, I think it does some sort of alteration. But when you look at the digital domain, I think it's not so bad. And provided that other methods of attenuation, of changing the sound just by using a resistor, I think nowadays we are at that level when you have a good streamer with good volume control, like digital volume control manner, you will be probably a whole lot better off than just using a resistive pot for volume changing. Uh, the jury is out there that if you have like a transformer based volume control, that won't affect the sound as much, or if yeah, so I think that might be something preferable, but that's not something generic that you see everywhere. uh, what kind of silver wire are you using on your speaker cables? So what I'm doing is actually on my speaker cables, I'm using copper. I'm using these big harmonic technologies, ancient copper cables, really heavy gauge, look like anacondas. And for the simple reason is that the silver I would use in that gauge, in that length, to reach from the amp to the speakers, it would need to be about $3,000 cost. And right now I have other priorities in life, and when I retire and, you know, paid off like higher priorities, then I will be able to put that kind of money into rolling out my speaker cable. But at the moment I'm not doing it because I still have not figured it out to how I will build a long enough speaker cable, because once you do it, and if you don't insulate it, then it oxidizes. If you insulate it, the insulator alters the sound. And I'm still, the jury is out there, I'm still experimenting on it. I haven't found a solution uh, uh, that is good enough for me to justify blowing $3,000 on an experiment. So at this moment, I'm just experimenting on the level of speaker cable, I mean on the level of interconnect cables. And for the speaker, actually I do have silver in it, but the silver is inside the loudspeaker. So the hookup that I'm using to the connectors on the speaker, and that short piece, that's about a 30 centimeter long piece wires, those are silver. And actually I'm using their gauge 32 silver, and I think it's 256 threads for the ground, and half of that, 128 threads for the positive. So that's what I'm using, and that is something that I would use for the speaker cable as well. But at that length, the cost is just not feasible at this moment. So that's why I'm using the second best, using the copper cable to connect to the amp. And I noticed that actually, like mixing copper and silver, that way it works. Some people say that don't mix copper and silver. I say that it depends on your gear and depends what copper, what silver, how they are. you just have to experiment with yourself, and there are some things that work and some things that don't work, and the combination that I'm using, it works, but there was experimentation that went to it. And I think how you can make silver and copper live together in harmony is avoiding connectors. So if even I put in like binding posts, like commercial ones, and the copper running to the binding post, and from binding post silver to the terminal of the tabs on the driver, that's not good. It won't work. It will sound like unrefined and rough, and problems with the sound, unbalancing. And what I'm doing is that I'm just using silver direct out. So I use that silver tube. So the silver wire connects to a silver tube, and the copper cable, I snipped off the original end of the harmonic tech cable and put in a silver bar, and the silver bar goes into the silver tube. That's how the connector is, and that way silver and copper, they live happily together. Okay, I think now I'm really pushing here my time limits, and Nelly woke up, and I think the cats probably should be woken up as well, and so I think now I'm just saying goodbye for now, and there's a long day ahead of me. So for me it's 9 a.m. in the morning. As you see, the sun is now fully up, and it's time to do things around the house and have breakfast. So thank you, team, for being here. I think this was a really fun session. I think I hope everyone had fun, and thank you, Tiago, thank you, Hoobs, Philo, Steve, and Craig. Hoobs, did I mention you? Rick, UP, and Olanzip, Ben. It's just really great to see you guys here, or see you. And have an absolute wonderful weekend. Thank you, team. Bye bye.